The paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your hosts, Dr. Dean Bertram and Jenn Durrell.
Well, hello, babies. I'm piloting the Talking Weird ship solo, at least for the moment. My normal co-host slash co-pilot, Jenn Durrell, has a little family issue she is dealing with, and we hope that she jumps in. But should she not, we've got such a fantastic guest tonight anyway, that I know you're going to want to stick around. He's a successful television documentary series producer and television show creator, committed to bringing daring voices and innovative ideas to the screen. He is respected in the industry as a cutting-edge, credentialized technologist, camera systems inventor, and wildlife researcher, documenting never-before-seen behaviors in animals such as black bears, beavers, fish, and invertebrates. His team captured the first ever footage of a free-swimming true giant squid in its natural environment for the History Channel, as seen in Predators of the Deep, a 2-hour TV special. His hit series Monster Quest is perhaps what he is best known for, although he's created many TV series over the last 36 years. He also consults for numerous other series, including the new In Search Of series on the History Channel, The Proof Is Out There, and Les Stroud, Survivor Man Bigfoot, as tech director. You can also catch him every week on his own show, which he co-hosts, the fascinating Untold Radio AM. So I'm delighted to welcome to Talking Weird, Doug Hajicek. Greetings,
Dean,
Doug.
how are you?
Good.
Hey, the last time we talked, it was like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and we were in a business meeting. Remember that?
I do. We were talking to a couple of other film festival directors, the wonderful chap who runs the 40 Film Fest in the UK, and another gentleman. What's the name of his festival? It's in Minnesota, I recall. I'm trying to recall his name.
Yes, Adam Colt at Z-Fest.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking with Timothy Whittard in the UK.
Yeah,
and he runs the 14 Times.
I'm wearing my 40 t-shirt tonight. Actually,
I
just recorded, so I didn't have to change. I just recorded a little episode for my new weekly YouTube show called My Weird Library, and this one was about the works of Charles Fort. So I donned the 40 t-shirt that we sell on charlesfort.org, which is a shameless plug for the t-shirt store. But my good sir, it's so incredible to have you with us. And we could I could talk to you, I could fanboy out about Monster Quest for hours, but I'm sure you don't want to go in that direction. You know what I watched this afternoon, though? Guess what show of yours I watched to catch up on? I've seen it before, but not for years.
What?
Fantastic show. Mysterious Encounters.
Oh my God. Yeah, it goes back 23 years.
Oh, it's kind of the prototype for Monster Quest. You can see much of that technological innovation in there, and you can see people who later became famous in cryptid television, like Matt Moneymaker and Bobo's in there. Lauren Coleman, who was already, of course, a big deal in the paranormal cryptid type field, is in there. And it's Autumn Williams was the star of that show. I know she got sick or something. Whatever happened to her? She was such a great talent.
I don't really know. I lost touch with her. She was an amazing talent. Super, super cool to work with. A great writer. She helped me write the show. And eventually, you know how things go. She lives far away, and we just lost touch.
Yeah, no, I think she's almost out of the field now, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
I'm unaware of anything she's done recently, but certainly other people on that show, just still, like, obviously Matt Moneymaker's a classic example.
Yep.
Good grief. I mean, I can't imagine there would have been a Finding Bigfoot without Monster Quest, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. And certainly Mysterious Encounters was the first pure Bigfoot show, a TV series. Plus, as I remember, it was somebody had told me this, and I hadn't really thought about it, but it was the first reality show on television.
Huh.
So it's kind of like, oh, okay. I mean, it was pretty cutting edge. We were, We had infrared. That had never been on television. Infrared, cameras that would shoot stuff. We had drones in there, if you can imagine that, 23 years ago. Helium balloons with thermal cameras. And back then they cost, $100,000.
Yeah.
And I remember freaking out every time we'd clip this big $100,000 thermal cam on a helium balloon, put it on a gimbal, that could, we could operate with a remote control and then send it up into the clouds. And it would just freak me out thinking, oh God, this thing, comes back.
Now you'd have a GoPro and $1,000 or a $500 drone, and if it crashed into the swamp, you wouldn't really, you'd just be a line item you'd write off. But
I looked at Mysterious Encounters too, and I was actually kind of impressed. I went, dang, we had a lot of cameras and a lot of, we were had to make our own camera traps. They didn't exist back then. We actually made our own using VHS recorders, underwater cameras that were tethered, with a cord, but they were pretty small. And then we would bury the tub underground and then put the lid on it and then bury that and then just have the thin cord coming out to a tree or whatever. And then we would use, I think our bait, mainly we used cat food. We didn't know, we're just doing our best.
They probably didn't have those pheromone chips back then, which have become
we
so
did.
popular. Oh, you did?
Yeah, we did, because they were developed for the Skookum Cast. Do you know what the Skookum Cast is?
You can tell our audience in case some members there don't know.
Oh, okay.
Or some listeners don't know.
Looking at it right now, it's the cast of an entire body where a creature supposedly laid down in a mud wallow and reached over to get some apples that Rick Knoll had put in the middle of this mud wallow, along with Derek Randalls, Matt Moneymaker was out there. Who else? Alan Terry. Oh, there were a number. And then the late Dr. Leroy Fish. A lot of people don't know who Dr. Leroy Fish, but he was a Bigfoot researcher, and he was a biologist. But the story goes, I was supposed to go on that expedition, the Skookum. And my son announced that he was going to get married, and they were coming to town, and it was it was just all this stuff. And I went, oh man, I can't go. So who am I going to call? I called Dr. Juice, a friend of mine. And I said, hey, Greg, can you by any chance make a sex pheromone for Bigfoots? And this is what happens. True story. He goes, huh? Yeah, I think I could. I should have the ingredients in my basement. I said, say what? He goes, yeah, I should have. I said, he goes, I did a sexual study back in college, and he had all these enzymes, with from the human vagina, the bacteriums that grow. He had gorilla bacteriums from their vagina. He had all these things. And of course, he's the only guy in the world that would. And he mixed up a batch, and he said, oh man, this stuff's potent. Calls me back, and I said, great. Well, you're going on this expedition in my place, and you're going to bring these pheromone chips, and they're going to love you. And that's kind of the first thing that happened is the Skookum Cast was gotten. So, who knows?
Did you ever see, I haven't seen it, but I heard about it. You're probably aware of the paranormal reality show Hellier, and you probably are aware of Greg Newkirk and Dana Newkirk, maybe.
No,
anyway, Hellier is fantastic. You should watch it. I think it's free. It was on Prime. I think it was one of the things they removed, but it's still free on YouTube. But anyway, they're fairly well-known paranormal type investigators, and I think they have a Patreon type thing. I think it's not Patreon, but it's something like that. And they do fund things for, the people who subscribe. And one of the things I know Greg did because Jen, my co-host and girlfriend, used to be a member of their Patreon or whatever it was. He actually was dared to put one of those pheromone chips in his mouth. And I think
no.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I would let dogs smell them and they would run. Horrible. Weird smell.
Oh, I can only imagine. If you could go back to those either those Mysterious Encounter or Monster Quest days, or maybe not go back to them, but do some of those again now, are there cases you'd want to revisit, or are there things that have arisen in the field that you're interested in now and would want to look at now if you were still running a show like
Oh
Monster
God, yes.
Quest?
Oh God, yes. Like when we were in Whitehall, our trailer got attacked. There was a lot of things that didn't end up in the show because, we didn't have any recorders going, didn't have any evidence. They really didn't want to put that kind of stuff in. It happened in Louisiana. We had an attack on our trailer, 4 a.m. It's kind of the same old thing where they'll come around your trailer, sneak around, you'll hear them. And then, they'll start throwing rocks or bang on your thing and you'll bolt out of the trailer door really quick and there's nobody around. Like in Whitehall, there's no way anybody would have gotten away where we were. We would have seen them if they would have been human. Just a lot of weird stuff happened. But yeah, no, we did a lot of cool things. I remember we did a show in the Skookum Meadows, and Rick Knoll had designed an e-bike with these quick camera triggers, so he could actually take an SLR cameras and trigger them from his handle grips, with light. And we would bomb down these mountains, silently coasting. And at one point we photographed a black bear, but it's things like that we were doing that were at least cutting edge. And I always figured other people would follow doing, do those things over and over and over and over until they had success. Never happened.
That's interesting too, because you have that solid background as a wildlife documentarian. So when you deal with beasts or beings or strangeness in the wild, you actually have a background on how to capture these kind of things, which probably always put you ahead of the field of everybody else, really.
Yeah, a little bit. I was at first, I started out as just a wildlife photographer and wildlife researcher. And then, we found these tracks up in the Arctic and that kind of swayed my whole life. I got a hold of Matt Moneymaker in California. We kind of hit it off on the phone, and I was a producer, and he certainly had, wants to get this information out on television as I did. Because to me, I became a producer, so I'd have the money to do the forensic tests.
Huh.
That was the reason. I wasn't a producer who said, oh, gee, Bigfoot's real popular. Let's do a Bigfoot show. No, I wanted answers, Dean.
I know, speaking of Bigfoot and searching for answers, 2 of my favorite episodes in Monster Quest regarding Bigfoot or Sasquatch were the Snellgrove Lake, which you revisited. Have you kept in touch with that location, or are you aware of what's going on? Are those kind of attacks on the cavern and those type of things still going on there? Or
I don't know, because right after the last episode, the outfitter sold it. I didn't know the new owners. We went up there one time after the show, and we did have activity. We had the cabin attacked. But I haven't been back. I don't know what goes on. But the place really isn't that unique. That's what's interesting. Snellgrove Lake is not that unique. We went to another cabin on the edge of the Boundary Waters Canoe Area. I'm sure you're familiar with that, living in Wisconsin, Dean. It's in the Superior National Forest. It's this giant, it's 1 million acres of a wildlife preserve. Well, we rented a cabin right on the edge, literally right on the edge. And this was off the grid cabin. And we just did the same things that we would do, which is a couple of wood knocks and you retire. You don't do anything else. And sure enough, 3, 4 in the morning, the cabin got attacked. In fact, it got attacked so hard that it was the first time I ever heard my daughter swear. My young daughter was like 13.
gosh.
And she's saying the F word because the whole wall was coming at us. Like, if you can imagine a semi-truck hitting the wall of a cabin in the middle of the forest. And I remember, I loaded the 30-30. The bed flew away from the wall that we were in. And it's what I call the grand finale, because it was coming up on the porch and I could hear it opening and closing the recycling bin for the glass that was on the porch. And there was one out there for your cans, and because you usually got to pack out all your garbage, these wilderness places. And it would come up and it would open and close it, open and close it, open and close it. Then it would walk over to the other one, open and close it. I mean, like 20 times. And then it would walk down the porch and go and mess with the tonneau cover on my buddy's truck. It would tear the Velcro. You'd hear this, and then it would put it back. Then it would walk up on the porch, open and close the glass recycling bin. Then the other one. Well, my daughter made me tape a blanket with duct tape over the window, because when we got there no window treatments, because it's in the middle of the woods. What do you need curtains for? And she goes, I'm not sleeping in here with these open windows, because we had already heard a scream. After our wood knocks, we heard this very loud, almost like a bark scream is the best way I can describe it. So to make a long story short, this thing or things came back every night, and each night it attacked a different wall on the cabin. And so the second night it was my son's and his girlfriend's wall. The third night, we knew we said, well, it's your turn next. And sure enough, it came around to the back side and it messed around with the wall, threw the broom at a big push broom at the cabin, flipped over this plastic box that held the cleanup tools for the fire pit, and then bam, against the wall. I mean, it's insane when you feel the power of these things. And so I hate to say it, but we've had activity everywhere we go, and so my son starts going, well, it's got to be us. It just has to be. They have to be paranormal. It has to be somehow something to do with us. He said, how could we have activity everywhere we go like this? I said, I don't know. I said, why don't you just, don't make your mind up. Here, go rent another place. And so he found this place where they had a boat to. They actually brought him by boat, dropped him off in the Boundary Waters, right on the edge in a whole nother area, 20 miles. First night, something's walking around the deck with a stick going tit, 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 tit. And then all of a sudden, whoosh, big pound. That's night one. And they have, they recorded all this stuff.
Wow.
Then the next night, it's banging on the door, on the back. And then, and throwing rocks at the roof. And so he started just trying to prove that it wasn't us. And so every time he went, he did a number of 10 trips into the Boundary Waters. Every time he came back with just amazing, activity. So we don't know, and everywhere I've gone, I've had activity.
Gosh. Well, there are authors like Joshua Kuchin in Where the Footprints End, for example,
Right.
who suggest that there are commonalities between Bigfoot knocking on walls and stones being thrown with things we don't normally think about. Like poltergeist activity often has stones being thrown at houses and things pounding on the walls. So perhaps your son's suggestion that it was paranormal or somehow had something to do with your family, it certainly isn't something that other people haven't suggested.
We don't know, obviously, and I'm not suggesting that's what it is, because when you're in the moment, everything's very physical. The rocks are rocks. I mean, you can find them. There's rocks. You find the footprints. You find the hair. That's not an invisible spirit that's leaving hair and rocks and banging on wood and screaming. So you don't know. I don't think there's any way anybody can prove it. That's the problem.
Yeah, I think what's interesting too is a lot of the early Bigfoot writers, so I know you'd be familiar with people like Peter Byrne and John Green, seem to suggested in their early works, well, these things don't want to be known about. They want to hide from us. If they ever happen to look in at a window, they're just curious, but it's very rare anyway. I mean, literally, those were the type of points they mentioned. But it's funny enough, I'm working on a couple books at the moment, and one of them includes, that's why I'm fascinated to talk to you about this stuff. One of them includes Bigfoot attacks on cabins and dwellings. It's incredible that the history of Sasquatch in the United States of America and Canada it's filled with these tales about these things attacking cabins. I mean, you went to Ape Canyon, I think, in Mysterious Encounters,
I
for
did,
example.
yes. Yeah.
That's a classic early tale, but there are plenty more, all the way through Boggy Creek up to Snellgrove Lake, up to Hanoibia, or however you pronounce it. And they're the really well-known ones. There's lots of little lesser-known ones as well in there. There's heaps of cabin and house attacks by Sasquatch.
I would venture to guess that anybody who lives in Bigfoot country has experienced house banging, rock throwing, but I would imagine it's sporadic. It happens maybe once a year and they blow it off. It's like, what was that big, thing that smacked into the house? No, it was probably a white-tailed deer that smacked into the house. But I'm sorry, white-tailed deer generally don't run into cabins.
No, I have them all around here. They never run into my cabin. So,
I've heard about it when they're being chased by a wolf and they're being, and there's something going on. But generally, then there's going to be something. But we've experienced such power, when they want to let you know that they're going to leave. And it's usually when they're going to leave. They usually do a grand finale that's unbelievable. It's quite scary. There was the one time I was at Snell, the first time actually we had Bigfoot activity up there, because I'd been going up there for many, many years, never had any activity except the occasional thing that we weren't connecting to Bigfoots. For instance, I brought two guys that worked for me up there to just enjoy the fishing. And it was just a paid fishing trip for them, just to have a good time. And they came back one day all shook up. They said, well, a stick came hurling over the top of the trees and landed by their boat. And I just thought, well, maybe it was under tension from a windstorm. And it was wrong. I was debunking this stuff. I had never had any activity up there. And it's such a vast wilderness around Snell. It's like you never even see wildlife, Dean. Never. I would go up there year after year after year, sometimes 3 times a year. I'd see one seagull. That would be it. Never see a pine marten, a weasel. I never saw a mouse. Nothing.
Gosh.
And never saw a black bear. But it was rare. You go up there enough. Eventually, I saw a moose. Finally, I busted a moose on a river when I was going really fast down a river. One time, I busted a mouse. A mouse. That was my wildlife sighting for like over 3 years, one mouse. And I remember that happened to be the one time I slept outside because it was really hot. I was up there alone. And it was really hot in the cabin because it's got steel siding. And it was beautiful outside. And so I pulled the mattress from the futon out on the dock. I was just sleeping out there, but this little mouse would run up to me and then run away and run up to my face and run away. He was just cute, But that was a big deal up there because there's just nothing. It's so vast. And I always tell people, I have more wildlife, on the edges around my home in the suburbs here than you'd have up there because it's so vast. Animals like edges. They like to be next to farms and homes and, wherever there's edges or a power line cut or a railroad track. Or an open field, that's where they want to be, next to an apple orchard. They're not in the middle of nowhere.
I wish I could relocate my mouse population in my pole shed in my garage to Snellgrove. That would be. My cat does a decent job keeping them down, but they're out of control here. But anyway, that's something else.
So, we never had any activity up there until one time we decided to bring our daughters up. And Joe brought his daughter, Vlad brought his daughter, and I brought my daughter, Dakota, up. And she was making monkey sounds. I had taken everybody had guided them into this hidden lake. You got to go in this real narrow stream and you kind of pull back there just because the fishing's cool and it's really creepy back there. You just feel like you're being watched, and I can't explain it. Every time I go back there, I always felt like something was watching me. And so we were pulling out of that stream, and there was a wood knock right next to our boat. So it was then I went, oh, there might be Bigfoots around here. Let's go ahead and do a wood knock tonight. So we did a wood knock at like 2 a.m, and there was a wood knock, Dean. I swear to God, it was just like that quick. bam, right next to us. You should have seen. I'm sure I turned white too. But these other two guys were very skeptical, and they just turned white.
Gosh.
Because they knew, they felt, you could feel the power of that crack. And they knew it was something with hands that did that. You just have to accept that. It takes hands to do, something, unless they're doing it with their mouth, which we don't know. But at that point, we believed they were doing it with their hands. So we then had a rock exchange that lasted, of just small rocks that Maria would toss into the woods. And then small one would land by our feet. And we'd wait a while and toss one in. Another small one, very unaggressive, very friendly almost. Well, then everybody got tired. I went to bed. Or everybody went in the cabin. I stayed up. I didn't go to bed. I sat at the little table by candlelight, was reading an old, dilapidated Field and Stream magazine. Finally, I started getting tired, because I had adrenaline coursing through my body from this whole thing that happened. So then I finally said, oh, gee, I should brush my teeth. So I walk up to the window. Remember, it's dark in the cabin now. It's just a little tea candle going on a table. So I walk up to the window that faces the woods, the opposite of the lake, and I flick on a battery-powered fluorescent light above my head. So let's just say there were creatures standing outside that window. I scared the living tar out of them. And, because everybody teased me because they thought, oh, gee, you scared them with your hair, right? Your gray hair, white hair. And it does glow under a fluorescent light. You ever seen me under a fluorescent light? It's scary. People can see me from a mile away. Okay. So, and then all the screaming started and rock throwing, and something was running up on the roof.
Gosh.
And then the cabin started I was in the kitchen, right? I was holding onto the counter figuring, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Because my daughter's in the other room and there's other two kids in there. And I feel really, I'm the one that invited everybody up. And I feel really responsible. Like I'm feeling like we're going to all get murdered now. Because if you would have heard the screaming and the violence that was going on out there, obviously it was just a bluff. But, or I have another theory that they had a juvenile with them and it jumped up on the roof. Right? Because I could hear, I'm not talking about a 500-pound Bigfoot running up there. It sounded like a smaller creature. Huh. And I looked and the skylights open.
Oh, no.
And you can imagine this is like a horror movie. And so I'm looking around because I knew there was a pole. Somebody had opened it. I didn't open it. Somebody had opened it to let the hot air out. And I'm looking around. I couldn't find the pole. And I finally see it. And I get the hook. And I'm, trying to get the hook in the thing. And I'm trying to turn this thing. And then I go back in the kitchen. And I'm just like, still, what do I do? What do I do? We have no weapons. I have a butter knife in the door. Okay. And all of a sudden, this is when I really got scared, when I could see the floorboards in the kitchen flexing. Because the cabin was being rocked now, back and forth, lifted off its foundation. It's up on blocks. And so at this point, I run into the biggest guy we got with us, Vlad, big Ukrainian guy. And I start pounding on this guy. And I'm not like hitting him. This is my life depends on it, hitting somebody. If there was a fire in the home or something, that kind of trying to wake somebody up. So I'm hitting him. And for some reason to this day, I still don't know, he didn't wake up. So then I gave up on him. I ran into Joe's bedroom and I started hitting Joe. And all he did was turn over and groan. So now I run back into the kitchen. And it quit just as fast as it started. And it's over. Quiet like you've never heard.
That weird slipping brings to mind again paranormal tales, alien abduction tales, the Palmyra werewolf or wolf attacking the house tale where the teenage daughter wouldn't wake up properly. There's a lot of parallels with some of that, and also the fact that it seems to be the daughters or the younger girls who went there who triggered perhaps the event. It's common.
Possible. It is possible because the first time we've ever brought kids up there.
Gosh.
So maybe they were more curious and they were kind of keeping track of us.
Mhm.
Because usually it's a bunch of men that go up there, 6 men at a time,
Right.
always men, middle-aged guys who got money to go up there to go catch fish and get away. It's an expensive trip. It's a float plane trip. I'm sure that I think last I remember it was $1,800 in fuel just to get there one way, 1,800 in fuel. And that's way back.
Now, good Lord knows what the
I
price
don't even
would be.
think about it, Dean. I don't even want to think about it. Anyhow, anybody who owns a boat or a camper or a big RV, God bless you. Because, these big, huge 30-foot boats, I'd go with my friends once in a while that own some of these things, and we'd go fill up, and it was like, it'll be $1,200. I'm like, oh my God, you're kidding me.
Jeez.
And that was back then,
Yeah. I have trouble running my F-250 diesel truck at the moment. It's so expensive, so I can only imagine.
Crazy.
what
So
something
anyhow,
like-
so what we were talking about, the reason, and that's one theory. Sure, absolutely. The other thing was maybe they go there during the blueberries ripening, because one time we went up there and we were loaded for bear. We had a tent we had built, which I thought was a kind of a brilliant but simple idea, to build a blackout tent inside the cabin so that we could be awake, pretending to be asleep, but yet we're monitoring live monitors, so we can really bust these things.
Mhm.
Well, so all this equipment and technology, nothing happened. But the floatplane pilot comes and goes, there was a sighting about 80 miles from here, south of here. 2 native women were picking blueberries. And then everything flooded in. I'm like, oh, the blueberries aren't ripe here. But they were every other year.
Huh.
And the other thing, the reason I never had activity, I wouldn't go in. Remember, I was going there for 25, 30 years. I always went June 8th. That was my time. June 8th, every year, June 8th. Well, there's no blueberries then. I never had any activity. So now one of the guys I brought up, I was being a nice guy, bring this guy up to share this place, and the guy steals my date. I go to book, and the outfitter goes, oh, that date's gone. I'm like, hey, that's my date, Chuck. And he's like, well, it's not anymore. And I went, oh, no. So then we had a book in August 17th, as I remember, and the blueberries were ripe.
Huh.
We have the kids up there, and so it was a perfect storm. So
My
maybe
goodness.
they're not even there, but then they stop at the cabin, because at the end of your 3 or 4 day trip, you take all your perishables, which is too much. Every time we all pack too much. The lettuce, who's going to eat lettuce when you got fresh walleye and potatoes? I mean, fruit, cantaloupe, nobody's eating that. Eggs, yeah, maybe. We just brought too many, blah, 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 blah. So you throw out 80 pounds of food out behind the cabin 100 yards. So maybe that's why they make us stop there. If you believe in Bigfoot.
Yeah, I hate to keep being Mr. Folklore correlate, but encounters with various beings, including Bigfoot, sometimes fairies, sometimes it's even extraterrestrials, often revolve around people out picking berries, which is also fascinating.
That is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I was listening to a story yesterday. I'm very interested in missing people. Know David very well. And Dave got me interested in this whole thing. When my kids started asking, I asked them what they all wanted for Christmas, and they're all like, missing 411. I'm like, what's that? And they showed me, and I'm like, oh, David, I know David, because I knew David from back in the Bigfoot days.
Right.
And so I gave David a call, and he was so kind and so generous with my kids. But then I got interested in it and thought, God, who thinks about this? But it's a real phenomenon. I mean, my son went camping up in the BWCA, Dean, where a guy went missing on Whiskey Jack Lake, and all they found was his wallet. But he goes up there to say, well, is it Bigfoot taking these people? So he camps there, and oh my God, if you ever want to do a show and play this audio, it's insane.
I'd love to hear it.
I can get it to you tonight.
Oh, fantastic. Please do.
But the thing is it a coincidence that he had all this aggressive Bigfoot activity and people have gone missing in those areas? Plus, there's other information we finally uncovered. Apparently, a number of people from this area have been rescued by helicopter because of aggressive Bigfoot encounters.
Good night.
So that's all, is that all? And I've got written paperwork from the rescue, people that, the names are blacked out, of course, but you're like, oh, is that really, maybe what's causing some people to go missing?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not, maybe it is. We don't know. It just seems very coincidental.
Well, in the early Bigfoot lore, as you know, there were a number of stories about both Native American women being taken,
Right.
people who were trappers or miners being taken. So it's certainly there are historical correlates for people being snatched up by them.
Right. Oh yeah, there's plenty. And and certainly based on what I know personally, they definitely have the power to grab you. Like right now, there'd be no fighting. Something that can flip over a 1,200-pound gas tank like they did at Snell is not going to have a problem grabbing a 200-pound man and whisking him off. It's just, it's not going to be a problem.
God, that'd make a fantastic show for you to do a movie or series about, the Bigfoot kidnap type of narratives or theories that are out there.
Sure. And then there's other ones too. And you think, well, maybe there's a whole bunch of things in the forest that can get you. It certainly would be a perfect place for an alien to get you. And certainly if you're alone, there's no chance of a witness.
Mm-hmm.
There could be other predatory things there that we don't know. God, your imagination can run wild. But people have seen and reported time glitches while they're in the forest where they're walking on a trail. The few that have survived, they claim they're walking on a trail and all of a sudden they're in the woods. And they're like, well, where did the trail go? And why did I walk off the trail? And now they're completely discombobulated. They have no idea where they are. And they try to, and then what are you going to do? I'd be in the same situation. I'd be keeping track of my trail very carefully and knowing what direction I'm going and always, being aware. But if suddenly I found myself in the middle of the forest, I'd be as lost as anybody.
I think that's one of the reasons David Paulides, who you mentioned before, says carry some kind of sat navigation beacon type device with you, and also carry a sidearm, like just be prepared.
Right. Well, a sidearm too, it's going to give you confidence. But the odd thing is, it's so many of these victims drop their weapons, leave them. They drop their cell phone. In most cases, they've never tried to even call anybody, even though there may or may not have been signal. But wouldn't you hang on to your cell phone in case you pick up signal or could get to high ground or up a tree or whatever? No. And there's just so many of these cases where they find their clothing or their shoes. Why would you kick your shoes off? Or their clothes are folded, or they find them naked and dead. Even though the temps were not conducive for the, where the temperatures drop so low, your core temperature, and then all of a sudden you start feeling warm or hot. They call it paradoxical undressing. That wouldn't happen in a 60-degree, 50-degree weather. So, but they still find them naked. So I don't buy into the, even though they blame it on that, the authorities do. I just don't buy into it. There's something very weird going on.
Yeah, and sometimes they find the remains or the body in places they've already searched, like on trails. The search party have traveled multiple times, and then eventually there's the dead body. It's many strange things.
If it's placed there, and I've got a story where I kind of envisioned it as a missing 411 case, because we were on horseback, we're on this trail, and we went down the trail. Everything's just normal, great. It's along the St. Croix River that separates Minnesota from Wisconsin, where there's been numerous sightings along that river. So we're coming back, and we smell this horrible gagging smell. I mean, it was so bad. I remember covering my mouth, and everybody's, oh my God. But where did the smell come from? Because we had just rode through there. And then the next step, or the next thing happens, there is a coyote placed on the trail. Very, for sure in my mind, it was placed there. It was alive, but it had a broken spine.
Good grief.
So it couldn't walk. It was paralyzed, right? It couldn't walk. And there were 2 big handprints on this coyote, where you could see that something had grabbed it and just severed its spine. And then it was placed there. So I'm wondering if these bodies aren't placed there, if it's Bigfoot, just to kind of like, here it is. Here's what you're looking for. You don't know. And once again, I'm not saying missing people, it's going to be generally a whole bunch of reasons, there's going to be natural things, but as many things as I've seen, Dean, in my life and experienced, I wouldn't scoff at anything. Just won't. I won't scoff. I did a few times at things and I got humbled real quick.
Yeah, I heard a story from a very good friend of my stepfather that we used to hunt with in Australia, and I had no sense that he was lying or fabricating this story about him hunting with some other people, and they saw this silver being, for lack of a better term. He said it was like something wrapped in aluminum foil, but human-like, just drifting through the woods.
Okay, now this was somebody in your family?
This was my stepfather's best friend who we used to hunt with as well. Told
Okay,
me
I
that
gotcha.
story. So it wasn't like a tale from a third party
Right,
tale. The
right,
guy
right.
himself who saw it told me when I was probably, I don't know, about 18 years of age, he would have told me that story. And so you have to think, what the devil was that? That's no mistaken wild
No,
animal.
no.
He saw something genuinely anomalous. And he was with a group of other people. I think he was with 2 or 3 other hunters out there, and they all saw it.
Well, there was a time I was driving down a road that's got forest on one side. It's like 4 a.m, and I see what looks like a woman walking her dog on a leash. Okay, that's no big deal. Dogs got to go to the bathroom sometimes at 4 a.m. I didn't think anything of it. Looked like she had a white robe on. So, and she was kind of leaning back, like a big black dog. I figured it was a black dog that was pulling her. I just, my brain just poof.
Mm-hmm.
But as I approach and I get closer, I see there's no leash. There's no dog. And I keep getting close. There's no robe. And this whole thing is white. And I'm like, well, what am I looking at here? So I keep driving closer, I'm closer and closer. And I'm going, why does it have like a balloon head?
Good grief.
And now I'm really getting creeped out because I'm now got to pass this thing on the road, and I'm gonna pass it, and it's right in the middle of the road at this point. And so I get closer and closer. And then I realize there's no way I'm looking at a human. I was looking at, I just call it white. It was white head to toe, no clothing, just skinny white thing with his bulbous head, black eyes. And as I drove past, and slowly, I drove slow, and we looked at each other as I passed. And then I just kind of kept going slow because it didn't make any aggressive moves. And I turned and walked right into the forest.
Whereabouts was this? Doug, did you
This
say?
was literally in Blaine, Minnesota. And it was one of the creepiest things I've ever experienced. And then I thought, well, there's a chance somebody was playing a hoax. It wasn't near Halloween. It was getting near Halloween. But then I'm like, there would have been no way to. You couldn't have put a person in the costume. And it's just, when you're looking at something real. I don't think the thing was over 7-8 feet from me when we passed each other. And it gave me a dirty look. It's just, it was odd. I don't know what you, what do you do with that? But then that was my first realization where I went, you know what? There's creepy crap walking around our neighborhoods at night, the forest. God knows we don't have any clue because we're all in bed. We're not in the forest at night. And the people that have been in the forest at night, if they go missing, they're not going to be able to tell us any tales.
No, it's terrifying that there are things out there like that, which, and I've heard similar-ish stories of weird things which don't fit those kind of, delineated categories. Like, well, it's not a Bigfoot, it's not,
No,
a dog man, it's not a whatever, but
no.
there are these other things out there which just we don't even have any
I,
categorization to drop them in.
so I've been waiting and looking and researching for someone who has witnessed one of these white creatures leaning back as it walked, because it leaned as if it was, holding on to like something to counterbalance it. So, and I haven't found one story of somebody describing something, in the past history, not that I've, spent that much time, of an alien type creature leaning, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Lean back like that as it's walking, like it's being supported by something.
Gosh.
It was creepy.
If I ever stumble across a report like that, I'll send it to you
Oh my
straight
God, I'd be
away.
so happy if I find somebody else or some story from way back. And this happened probably at about, I'd say 2011.
We were talking a minute ago about that area between Wisconsin and Minnesota.
Yeah.
And there's also the driftless area there, which is famous for all kinds of, Bigfoot and Mothman and even strange big cats. And Linda Godfrey made a documentary, her first film. I know she appeared on Monster Quest with you a number of times, but she made her first documentary on the big cats there. But I know you have an upcoming documentary on Britain's big cat mystery. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm always fascinated with those large cats which are just out of place where people see them.
Sure. I'm working with, in fact, you met Tim that night we were in our business meeting, Tim Wittard and Matt. And they basically, we just kind of partnered up to one, produce a better show that's been done in the past. Two, to eventually get it sold, on television, which we did. And three, it's one of the things I'm really interested in because I've had my experiences here in the States. Once professionally, when I was filming a golf show, and with my, the executive producer was with me, and we're sitting in the car, and we're just waiting for the golf course to open. But there were some people that were golfing there. I don't know how they got on so early because the greens were wet still from the morning dew. And here comes what I thought was an African lion heading right for them. Right. And we're watching this and going, there's an African lion heading to these people. I mean, this thing was easily 200-300 pounds. It was massive. And it just had, and obviously, as I got my camera out and got that going, there was a big cougar, but a huge one, huge male. But that was my first experience with a big, kind of, because I grew up, we killed the last cougar in Minnesota in the 1800s and la, 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 la. Well, this was, in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, which is, the river is there. There's a corridor, nice river, the Mississippi River. Well, then, before that, I was with another guy, one of my camera guys, for Mysterious Encounters. In fact, it was the day we were leaving on our first expedition, the night before. So we were up all night, and I realized we didn't have a audio cord for our photograph balloon to send the video signal. My plan was to use a long audio cord to send the video signal. It was an RCA cord, so it didn't matter, right? So I just got one of those cheap Walmart audio cords that was like 500 feet from Walmart. So we're heading to Walmart at like 4 a.m, me and this guy, because we're leaving we're leaving that same day, on the bounder, which is parked in my driveway. And so we're driving down Radisson Road, and here comes what looks like a black leopard right in front of my van, left to right in front of us. We both saw it. And we were just like, what the frick? This is the night we're leaving for Mysterious Encounters, right? And this happens. We have a black leopard sighting. It was like a message, bon voyage, I don't know. But there we saw it clear as day, right? When you see something in the headlights at night and it's close to the car, man, you get a good look at it. I mean, this was not a cat, a house cat. Did not look like a cougar either. It had a very square head, big, massive muscles, huge rope tail, and it just looked powerful. It just ran in front of the car. So that, of course, and I did shows on Monster Quest on the big cats in the UK because they have the same problem going on. But this problem is going on. So let's put it this way: when we were on expedition looking for witnesses, I swear to God, if I heard it once, I heard it 1,000 times. Have you had a Bigfoot sighting? No, but I had a big black cat sighting. We heard it over and over and over. Every town we went into. It's kind of like this, that mystery needs to be resolved.
Yeah, it's another one of those things that see, when we're at the driftless area or somewhere, it's conceivable to imagine that might be a native population of, large black cougars or something, which have, somehow they have territory, they have places to hide, they have big areas to range. But in places like the UK, I don't doubt people are seeing something. I'm just wondering if it's actually a permanently physically real black cat, or if it isn't something coming and going out of this reality somehow,
Right.
or something manifesting.
Well, there seems to be too many sightings because, I've gone to towns. Well, I'll have 50 people tell me they saw a huge black cat. And I'm like, okay. And then we've been to towns too. Like we were in where Cumberland, Wisconsin is?
No, to be honest, I don't.
Okay, well, it's up. It's along the St. Croix River. It's in what I call the St. Croix Triangle, right? And I was just kind of bizarre because it was like everybody in the town had a Bigfoot experience. It's like, what's the deal? Like the guy, I see the postman, he's delivering mail. I go up to him and I go, hey, have you ever had any Bigfoot witness? Have you witnessed anything Bigfoot? He goes, oh yeah. I'm like, oh my God. It's just crazy.
When you called it the triangle, then is it because there's an awful amount of different anomalous phenomena that pop up there, or?
Yep. UFOs, Bigfoots, Mothmen, all sorts of strange things. That's where we had our kind of winged. I don't know what it was. I mean, once again, thank God I had a witness in the car because we were driving down 35W right along, which is it's real close to the St. Croix River at points. When you're up in like the Hinckley area, I think it's 20 miles away. So it's in that whole. It's where the forest starts heading downwards towards the river valley. And we're just driving moonlit night, and this thing drops down out of the sky and just heads right for the windshield. I mean, it did a kind of and then not that way. Didn't have any lights on. You could see kind of the shine and the silhouette of it. And it gets up to the windshield on the car, and it just, looks like it's going to go right through the windshield. Yvette dived, she hit the floor. And then, of course, I did eventually because I thought it was coming right through the windshield. But I got a damn good look at that thing, and that was, I can only describe it as something bat-like. But, wings as wide as the freeway.
Gosh.
Never flapped them. Defied physics when it dropped because it had its wings open. I mean, it didn't glide, towards us. It dropped and then it went towards us. And then I thought, oh, okay, I guess I will do a show like that on Monster Quest. I started making calls, and next thing you know, I'm all sorts of witnesses along the St. Croix River.
Jeez.
And so, and there were other people that had their car attacked the same exact way we did. So once again, was that a message from the universe?
Yeah.
We need to do that show. I mean, I didn't want to do it because there's no physical evidence.
That makes me think about a question I had from a regular viewer. Of course, he knew you were coming on. UFO Scriptorium is his
Mm.
YouTube username, and he said, "Ask Doug about the Van Meter visitor." Do you know much about the
Oh
Van
yeah,
Meter
I know a
visitor?
little bit about it. Sure, it's a
He
similar creature. I think
yeah,
that's what we saw. So yeah, I know a lot about it. I've seen one.
there you go. UFO Scriptorium will be happy to
Yeah,
hear that reply, I'm
once again,
sure.
if I would have been alone, I would have never have told this story. But you can call here and you can call Yvette and talk to her, and to this day, she still like. I wanted to go up to Walker, Minnesota, and she's like, She said, we have to drive through the woods. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, no, there's she's still freaked out about it. And that was years ago. She still is. I'll ask, let's say, hey, let's go out, let's go build a campfire in the back and let's look at the stars. And she's like, she comes up with excuses not to.
I don't blame her if that's going to show
You
up.
don't, and I don't either. No, I'm not passing judgment, because I am the same way in a different way. If I'm walking at night, my head's on a swivel, because I'm like, what if I wouldn't have had the car to protect me and her? What would that thing would have done? Did it swoop at us to scare us? Did it swoop at us to run the car off the road? Did it, you don't know its motives. What if you were just sitting there? And now they're having this huge amounts near Chicago, in Bend. I think it's Bend. There's been hundreds, I think we're getting into like 150 sightings. A lot of credible people that are having these things swoop at them. Recently, an Amazon driver just saw one. I believe during the day, it was on the neighbor's roof. What are they? I don't know. To me, it looked like a gargoyle, and there's no history of gargoyles, right? I mean, they're on every major downtown building. If you get into an old enough building, gargoyles on them. Why? I don't know. And I scoffed at it, Dean. Now I don't scoff anymore.
There seem to be these waves of popularity with different critters. Like, for example, Dogman, as I was talking to Ken Gerhardt about once, he said he'd hardly ever even, heard a report much before the 90s about these things.
Right.
And then perhaps after Linda Godfrey's book and perhaps after another similar things, all of a sudden there are almost as many Dogman reports as Sasquatch reports. And again, like you were just talking about the Mothman in Chicago or whatever you want to call it, the gargoyle or whatever, all of a sudden there seems to be this explosion of reports of those kind of beings. So it's like these things come in waves.
And I do want this to get out to everybody. This is important. I don't think it's because people are copying them or making the story up. Nobody in their sane mind is going to tell a story of seeing a dogman unless they damn well saw one. Could be mistaken identity, of course. What happened was people heard about it and they went, okay, I'm not crazy. It's a safety's and numbers thing. Safety. That's why people are telling their stories. Or it could be that there weren't anything like this, or there was at one point, in our history, and it went away for a while, the phenomena. Now it's back. I don't know. But I do know that people are not, 99.9% of people are not making this stuff up. What in the world would I have to, what would I have to gain? I was producing Monster Quest. I have nothing to gain. In fact, when I told my agents about what happened to us, and we were both on the phone with both of my agents, they went, you saw some owl. And I'm like, well, yeah, if owls are 20 feet wingspan, could have been an owl, but I didn't see any feathers. I saw skin, and I saw bones, and I could see the shine on its wings. I could see the shine on its face, its high ears, its black eyes. No. I don't think it was an owl, but that's what they didn't believe me. Did I gain any credibility with my agents? No, I lost it. I didn't get any. Because even though Yvette was right there with me telling them this is what we saw, they still didn't buy into it.
Well, I'm so grateful you came on the show tonight. It was a total delight to talk to you. And I love listening to your show, by the way, or watching your show, Untold Radio AM. Can you let the viewers know how to, A, see that show, B, how to keep up with what you're doing?
Sure. Best way is, Facebook is probably the best way for people to get a hold of me if they want to get a hold of me. I know Untold Radio is certainly on Instagram and, TikTok and all the different social media things. But our show's on Wednesday night, 7:00, and it is live on YouTube. But it's also a podcast. I'm sure, like your show is, Dean. If you don't hit the live show, you can watch it as a podcast. But we tend to have a lot of variety, guests. Like this week, we've got the gentleman that I did my first TV show produced. It was an outdoor show. And, we've known each other for going on 35 years now. And my first show is still on the air. So that's really cool. And so we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about how to get in the TV business.
I'll catch that one.
But we've also got like a paranormal guest on in the beginning. And so that's kind of the stuff we do.
Oh, I love it. It's one of my favorite shows of this format altogether. I regularly check it out. It's great. And your guests are always fantastic.
Thanks. Well, there's never enough time for these things because, man, I can jibber jabber.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, let's get you back on sometime. And I hope to see you at Midwest Weird Fest this year. I'd love to screen one of your films or just have you there to hang out in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. But until we chat again, Doug, again, thank you for coming on the show and keep it weird.
Yeah, we will. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight. If you're interested in checking out more episodes, you can find us at talkingweird.com. If you haven't already, please like the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talking Weird Podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to Talking Weird. We're available on most podcast platforms and YouTube. And if you do enjoy the show, please leave us a review. Dean and I would really appreciate it. Until then, stay safe and keep it weird.